Okay, so today we're going to talk briefly about what will happen to your spinal stenosis over the long run. Like, for instance, if you just didn't do anything for it. So really, it's the question that's on the mind of most people with spinal stenosis. What's going to happen to my back over the long run? Scientifically speaking, the only way to know for sure what happens to people with spinal stenosis over time is to conduct what is called natural history studies. Natural history studies attempt to find out exactly how long a disease or problem will last on its own, naturally, without interference, by following a group of patients over time that receive no medical treatment. Problem is, it's tough to get together a group of people with spinal stenosis, give them no treatment, and then just sit back and watch them for a few years. About the closest study you'll find in the medical literature on spinal stenosis went something like this. 32 people with spinal stenosis were observed for an average of 49 months, or about 4 years. Lumbar myelogram showed a complete block in 13% of patients. Nobody had surgery, and the study didn't specify that the patients got any treatment in particular. 4-year follow-up showed that symptoms in 70% of the patients were unchanged, 15% improved, and got worse in 15%. No proof of deterioration was found after 4 years. What I didn't like about the study was the fact that we really don't know for sure what kind of treatment the patients got, if any. However, that aside, this study does bring spinal stenosis sufferers some good news. It shows us that it isn't the case that everybody that has spinal stenosis is doomed to get worse over time. In fact, 70% remained stable after the 4-year observation period, and 15% even improved. Apparently, it's far from a given that all the changes in your spine that cause narrowing continue in a downhill spiral. Other studies have shown optimistic results. For instance, one decided to tackle things another way. Instead of just looking at one group of people with spinal stenosis and follow them for a while, these researchers decided to observe 2 groups of patients. Researchers got together a group of 54 patients with spinal stenosis. They had surgery. Researchers got together another group of 54 people with spinal stenosis that were matched to the first group by their age, sex, major symptoms, myelogram findings, and duration of symptoms. The group had no systematic conservative treatment such as physical therapy. You got those 2 groups. One had surgery, the others were matched, had spinal stenosis, and they just kind of followed them. Notably, there were some people in each group that had either a total or subtotal block on their lumbar myelogram. Both groups were followed for an average of 4 years. Results from the 4-year study follow-up showed us that there were no differences in outcomes between the group. So whether they had surgery or whether they didn't, they ended up doing the same. Here again, it's nice to know that you can have spinal stenosis and still do well without resorting to surgery. But what about if you try conservative therapy, such as exercise, and it doesn't work? Will you end up worse in the end because you delayed the back surgery that you should have had a while ago? Well, let's have another look at a study. 100 subjects with spinal stenosis were giving either surgery or conservative treatment. So 100 subjects, either one. Patients were followed for 10 years. More than half of the conservatively treated patients had a satisfactory outcome. Over the 10-year study, some patients in the conservative therapy group ended up having surgery. At the end of the 10-year follow-up study, researchers concluded that surgery for spinal stenosis was equally beneficial whether the person had it right away or if they waited for several years. Seems there is no harm done in delaying spinal stenosis surgery, because those who chose to wait a while ended up doing just as well as those who went under the knife right away. I think this is a really good study to know about, because some readers might be sitting here wondering if they should have really had back surgery instead of reading a book about spinal stenosis on their own. Now you know. So that's according to the research.